Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I'm looking forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. We did a 5-minute clinic on what?
Overcoming your circumstances.
Wow. Today, for episode number 248, we are going to do a small talks episode on comparison.
Okay, so I have the definition up, but before I jump into that, I'm going to ask you to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join, hashtag hyperconsciousnation. Folks, if you are chasing your goals and dreams and you want to be supported by a like-minded, growth-minded community, that is the place to do it.
And it's very interesting. We were talking about Mass Maritime earlier. Alan and I were reflecting on it. And then our buddy Jesse from Mass Maritime messaged me and said that people have been stopping him, thanking him for bringing us in, and telling him how much we helped. So that means the world to us, and we want to just keep doing that. So thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mass Maritime. We cannot wait to come back.
Going to be a good episode. Comparison. Okay, so let's frame this right out of the gate. Why are we doing comparison?
I think that so many people, my mic's all jeffed up here. I was on a podcast last night in here, so I had to move the mic a little bit. I think so many people are guilty of comparison. I know you and I are.
For sure.
It's just a different way. We're comparing ourselves to
the best podcasters.
The best speakers, where I think a lot of people are afraid to go to the beach because they're seeing these people on Instagram who are always in bikinis and always look good, or they're seeing people who have the nicest makeup so they don't look like they have zits or anything like that. You should see the size of the boil I have in my forehead right now. But I think we're all guilty of comparison, and unless you're very, very hyper-conscious, your comparison is probably hurting you in the long run versus helping you.
Right.
Especially if you're not comparing your reality to somebody else's, which if you're watching social media, you're not.
Because it's not reality.
Like,
it can't be. It's
right.
It's a highlight
Even
reel
ours,
or snapshots.
The teaser clips are the best parts that we think are going to resonate, right? Like that's what it is.
The natural progression of marketing versus reality.
Right. So that's another thing.
Remember that time you said to Evan Carmichael that marketing
Evan didn't like that.
Is making things look better than they actually are?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know if I agree with you. Every single episode, Kevin has one thing that
there's always
annoys the guest.
There's
it's
always
hilarious.
one. But my thought was,
hilarious.
have you ever eaten a Big Mac that looked like the Big Mac on the commercials?
Exactly.
Never.
No, of course not.
So that's marketing.
All right, so comparison is defined as the act of comparing, the state of being compared, a likening illustration by similitude. Similitude.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's a great word.
Comparative estimate or statement. So one of the things I want to make clear here before we jump too deep is a lot of people say, like, don't compare yourself to others. But here's the problem. From all the neuroscience I've studied, our subconscious always is doing that anyway. So, for example, every time you walk into a room, immediately your subconscious is taking in the people in that room, the persons, places, things, and ideas in that room, and trying to compare where you fit. It's always trying to feel where you fit. So let's say, hypothetically, you walk into a room with 6 other athletes that are like world-class CrossFitters. Your subconscious is immediately going to put yourself as I am less fit and less capable in this room, most likely. The problem is if you're hyper conscious of the fact that that's happening, like it's really easy to say, "Oh, I don't compare myself to others," versus your brain does automatically. It has to. You know?
Yeah, but the one thing is that's in reality. If you're looking at a CrossFitter and they look better than you and they're in better shape, then you can accept that. But if you're seeing them on Instagram,
Right.
I don't think comparison is always a bad thing. I think the problem is you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing
Right.
Again, you're comparing shiny apples that have been, and this is obviously an analogy, but like think of it this way. When you see a Burger King commercial, when you see a restaurant commercial, half the time it's not even real food.
Oh, I know.
It's literally set up on a table with lights, and like it's not real. It's not what you get when you go out to eat. And I think that's what a lot of people's social medias are. And
know.
when you're comparing yourself to one thing that I've always wanted to say, I've always wanted to make a meme of this, and I never did because I didn't think it would go over very well. But it was literally going to be, don't worry, the models don't look like that either.
I know.
Because a lot of times they don't. Sometimes they do, for sure.
Well, you cherry pick the photos.
Of course.
I was talking to Emilia yesterday, and I think her intuition of what photos pop is far better than mine because I'm always just looking like, which one do I look?
She's a girl.
Right. And so I asked her, like, I have 2,800 professional photos taken of me. Like, do you mind going through them and letting me know which ones you think will evoke an emotional response? Because, so let's just break this down. So my goal as a peak performance fitness coach is to create photos on Instagram that will evoke an emotional response so that people, if you've ever seen my Instagram, basically I have the 3 tips. Like there's 3 mindsets that will help you in fitness. So those are the value, I think. Which photo should I choose to evoke enough emotion to get them to read the tips? Because I want to help people with fitness, right? Out of those 2,800 photos, guys, like, it takes sometimes 30 or 40 of them for me to get one good one. I am cherry picking the good ones. Like, everyone's doing that. So that's why social media is so dangerous if you don't know the truth.
It's almost like when we say, when you feel really good and you're in a really resourceful state, seek challenge. When
Right.
you're burning down, seek comfort.
Right.
It's almost like if you do a speech and you feel like you did really well and you're like, I am amazing, go watch Gary Vee, go watch David Meltzer, go watch
Right.
somebody blow it out of the water.
Right.
Tom Bilyeu, Brendan Burchard, Lewis Howes, go watch somebody like that. But if you go do a speech and you don't feel like you did very well, watch your last rep.
Right.
You did feel like you did well.
Right.
Because I think that's the problem is the biggest takeaway for me, and this would have been my 10-second blip at the end, but I want to use it now. The only person that you should consistently be comparing yourself to is the person that you were yesterday.
Exactly.
And that's the only way you're in control of that. And you know exactly who that person was. There is nothing behind the scenes. You are that person. So that's my biggest takeaway for comparison. And I do believe it can be used in a positive light as long as you can control it. As long as you can control it, I think it can be used in a positive light. But when it comes to your body, that's hard. Like when it comes to your relationship, that's hard because you don't know if that's really what it is.
You mean in terms of measuring it?
Yeah, I think social media has made it dangerous to.
Well, how many times have you seen couples on social media that appear incredibly happy that you know aren't?
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
Right. So it's very difficult. Again, so there's a Wayne Dyer quote that I literally live by. I say this all the time. I don't know if I've ever said it on the show. There's no nobility in being better than someone else, but there is all nobility in being better than you used to be. And what he used to say is, I'm not better than anyone else, but I can tell you for sure I'm better than I used to be. That, to me, comparison's a thing for me. If Kevin and I go in the gym, there's going to be a part of me that wants to be stronger than him. Is that really that bad? Who
I don't think so.
cares?
I don't think
That's going to push me to be better. I'm happy for you, but also striving for me. Competition is great if it's used in the right way. Now, if I allow Kevin being stronger than me to hurt my self-esteem rather than to inspire me, then it's probably a bad thing.
But I think that's where a lot of people are.
I know.
So
what do they do about that?
They stop. You have to understand that if your reason for comparing yourself to somebody else is to get better, I think that's good. As long as, again, you got to bottle that shit up and you got to use it at the right times.
Right.
If you're comparing yourself to somebody else because you feel like you'll never have what they have,
Right.
you're playing a dangerous game because they might not even have what you think they have, number one.
Right.
And number two, if you're using that comparison to hold you down and you're not going to take action because I could never be that way. I think a lot of how you leverage comparison is what your identity is.
Because one of them is going to inspire you.
Yeah.
Like, your strength inspires me, genuinely. I like going to the gym with you because it's like, yeah, that's awesome. I want that too.
Right.
Right? But if it was from a place of I can't get that, then it's going to be a negative.
If it was the first time you ever went to the gym and I squatted super heavy and you were like, oh, wow, I could never do that. Right. Working out with Kevin makes me feel bad about myself because I could never get there, then that would be bad.
I don't know if I've ever felt that way.
You're not a normal human being when it comes to that. Mm. Your level of self-belief is so much higher than most.
Interesting. So here's an interesting thing. So you squat, for lack of better phrasing, ass to grass with like 3 plates easily. I can't do that, just so everyone knows. I can't yet. I can't do that yet. But when I see him do it, literally I can tell you for sure that I now squat with better form. I squat lower than I used to. I do more mobility than I would if I didn't have that feedback. Like, to me, it is all inspiration. It's like, okay, even with Bianca too, like, same deal. So let's say I was on your end of Drive to 5, and I didn't feel like I could ever squat 3 plates. Like, if you asked me right now, could you squat 3 plates? The answer is absolutely. It's just a matter of time. So because I have that belief, it doesn't bother me that you can. Mm-hmm. What if I had... Okay, so...
It's inspiration versus to detriment. One inspires you, one holds you back.
So then that means going to the gym with Kevin is a mirror of whether or not I am confident and believing in myself.
To a degree.
So the question becomes, when you're in rooms with other people that are exceptional and they have character traits that you admire, if it makes you feel bad, then that means you have a belief problem.
Probably. And I think, again, being in person with me, well, I'll just use me as an example since we are, is going to be different than if you watched me do it online. Because if we do it together, the first thing I'm going to tell you is all the numbers are on these weights is numbers. Don't worry about it. I don't care how much weight you do. I'd rather see you do it right. Right? How many times have I said that? I tell people that all the time. I tell Mark that every time we work out with him. Right. Don't worry about the weight. Form first.
I know.
Form first. Right?
It doesn't bother Mark at all.
No.
And he puts on 25s when we're doing a couple plates.
Right.
But that's because of belief again.
I think it's
because of belief.
I think it's you. Like he interviews some of the most successful people in the world.
Right.
He knows he's going to be there eventually. He believes it.
Wow.
So I think for some people it's a preview of what you want your life to be. For others, it's a fear of what your life could never become.
Wow, man.
And I think that's where a lot of people live.
So then, the question becomes, dude, there's no way to get better without getting around people that are better than you. Like, I used to say this, if you want to get good at chess, go lose a bunch at chess. Yeah. Why? Because you're going to learn each time what you screwed up. But if you allow that to leak into your self-esteem of, like, I'm the worst, then that's bad. So on your end of Drive to 5, how have you overcome that?
The confidence conundrum. That is what the confidence conundrum is. Everybody... At the beginning, it's hard to take action for everybody. If you don't have belief, you're not going to take the action. No matter what, you're going to get the feedback, right? You're going to get the result no matter what. And it's either going to lock in the fact that, like, oh, I could never be like that, or, oh, you know what? That actually went better than I expected. I can use this feedback as, something to construct on. But I think just with social media, it's like...
Right. It's not even real.
It's not even real.
So you're comparing to something that... Like, okay, so for example, let's say a lot of athletes are on steroids. And if you want to do what they're doing and look like they're looking, but yet you're not going to use steroids, then you're never going to win that game.
Yeah.
You can never... It's like you're comparing to something that isn't even... That's why I love pulling back the curtain, I think. Because it shows what the person's really doing. Like, I remember when I first started, coaching with Nate, like, he taught me... I got to watch him... I remember I was at his place and he was foam rolling first thing in the morning. And back then it was like weird. Right in the middle of a conversation, he'd just pull out the foam roller and start foam rolling right in the middle of our conversation. And I remember being like, wow, like this dude's so on point. Like, I need to be more on point. I left inspired.
I think that's your natural place.
Right.
I think it's your natural place. Like when you seek an inspirational movie, why? Why are you seeking an inspirational movie?
To be better.
Right.
For more emotional why power to
because
be better,
you see yourself, you are that character a little bit.
Right.
Right? You see yourself as that character.
I think I see the potential to be if I want to be.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So you struggle with this sometimes when you're in rooms, quote unquote, out of your league in business or whatever. Yeah. What do you do about it? for the listeners?
I got to reflect and remember, at episode 1 of this, I didn't believe I could podcast. And now we've done 250, right? And now I'm a podcast coach. And now I talk to, like, Mark Metry is our boy. He's one of the most successful podcasters there is, right? So I've proven to myself over and over again, like, I'm not a speaker. Okay, the first speech I did, I got paid for. Most people don't do that. Right? So, and obviously I've been humbled along the way. The movement family, we talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it's just continuing to prove my doubts and my fears wrong. And I think with comparison, you have to take the action.
So at Mass Maritime, I remember you being a little shooken up. We were masterminding the next day about what we could have done better because we have a new framework on how to be a better storyteller. And I remember you saying to me, I wish I knew that last night. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't care that we didn't know that last night. The only reason we're talking about this now is because of last night. What place is that from? Because I think that's from the place that the listeners can relate to better in terms of you wish you had done better.
You're comparing yourself today to yourself 10 years down the road. I'm comparing myself today to yesterday. Like I always say, like, the most important speech to me is the one I just did. The most important speech to you is
the next one.
Right, the next one or the next 5 years down, right?
Right.
I just think not most people, a lot of people aren't able to use comparison as a constructive feedback. And it's so out of your control. Like, imagine if you hate your job and you only see the positives of some person or some couple traveling the world, and it looks like they're living the dream. It looks amazing. They're living the dream. Right. They're in Sri Lanka, and they're in Asia, and they're in Bali, and they're in the Maldives, whatever the hell they're called, all these nice places.
Right.
And there you are in your office job. You're 9 to 5. If you believe in yourself, you might say, hell yeah, I could do that too.
Right.
If you don't believe in yourself, you might say, wow, look at my life compared to theirs. I could never do that.
Ooh, that's the worst.
That's how I used to live. I used to say must be nice. When I said must be nice, that was my indication that I don't think I could ever have it. It must be nice to have that car.
I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
That's why I think you're a rare person. You've had the belief.
What do the listeners do if they're in that place?
I think there's a couple of things. The only person you can logically and realistically, wholeheartedly compare yourself to is the person that you were yesterday. You don't know what the person on Instagram is doing.
Right.
You don't know how much money they're making. You don't know what work they're doing. You don't know what personal development they're doing. You don't know how they feel about themselves. That is the most important thing. You're only comparing yourself to the polished product. When you're not polished, when you're reflecting on a previous rep, you're not polished. You're actually digging.
You're in the process of polishing.
Right. You're digging for pain.
Right.
That's what you're doing when you're finding feedback. Right. When you're seeing people, they're not looking for feedback when they post. They're looking for love.
Mm. That's why I love when Gary posts those old videos of him.
Oh, I love it.
Right.
Somehow he got more hair. How did that happen?
Right.
Gary, how did that happen?
10-second blip.
10-second blip. Again, I go back to the only person that you can actually compare yourself to and consistently and sustainably use as motivation is yourself. Because you're the only person who knows what's going on in your head.
It's a really good episode.
This was a fire episode.
It's a really good episode. The last thing that I would say here, I think this is why in-person mentors are so important, because you get to see what they really like, and you get to realize they're not perfect, and they're not as awesome as you think, and they're not on this pedestal you think they're on. Like, I can guarantee you, every single person you know is a warning and an example, including Kevin and myself. Like, there's something we suck at tremendously, I can guarantee it. And we try to talk openly about those things. Yeah. But, like, be careful of the highlight reel on social media, because we're not showcasing our weaknesses. That's
right. That's what we
not
do here.
How it works.
And that's one of the reasons we talk the way we talk. You guys, if you want to compare yourselves to us, that's fine. But compare yourself to the version of Kevin who screwed up at the movement family, to the version of Kevin who was super low and suicidal. Like, don't just compare yourself to this. You got to compare yourself to the stories we told, because that was us at one point.
So Bianca asked me to help her with speaking. And I remember when she was going to get on camera for the first time, this will be fast, I told her, right, I said, I want you to watch this video. It's my very first one.
Right.
The Real Life Superheroes video. Like, look at this kid who just had a dream. Like, that's who you need to compare yourself to, because you're about to do your first rep. Don't compare your first rep to my 270th.
Exactly.
You know, and that's not, dude, fire episode.
So, yeah, I think that the biggest takeaway, that's the biggest takeaway for you guys. Don't compare yourself, especially don't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing it for years.
Right.
Compare your episode 1 to somebody else's episode 1 and just get started.
Evan
and
Carmichael's first video.
brutal.
It was
Absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. But he
Walt
admits it.
Disney, yeah.
He admits it. And
he kept
look
it up for that reason.
Right. So that's exactly what it's all about. All right. You get out of here?
Yeah, I think it's time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this. Up next, we are going to do a Scratching the Surface episode on reframing your thoughts. Shout out to Marky for the suggestion.
Thank you, Mark, for the suggestion. Basically, anytime something happens, you got to be careful of how you process it. And if you're processing it negatively, you're going to need a reframe. We talk about this all the time with our clients. Do not miss this
We're
one.
going to try to go super duper extra hyper-conscious in that because that's exactly what hyper-consciousness is. We hope you will enjoy, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.